Hi, welcome to my real life, not Pinterest, pantry. And really when I say pantry, I mean kitchen, because pantry foods are great, but also we store food in the fridge and in the freezer. And that is what this is all about today. Now, this isn't your typical pantry tour where I talk all about organization. It's not really about organization. What it's about instead is how to build a pantry. Again, a pantry, fridge, and freezer. How to buy and what kinds of things to keep in mind when you're thinking about the foods that you're gonna have on hand for those days that you don't plan your meals. And let's be real here, planning meals is fantastic. I highly recommend it. I enjoy it. I find it super helpful, but it's also something that does not happen all the time. I don't do it all the time. I wish I did it more, but I'm a real person who is not perfect at meal planning, and that's fine. And you might be that way as well. So what are we doing on the days that we didn't plan on anything and you get home, or you're ready to eat, you're hungry, and there's not really anything ready to go? Well, this is what you're gonna need. You're gonna need kind of a guide as well as some recipes, which I will share later. So again, not a tour for organization, but a tour for putting together meals with what you have and planning ahead to have things on hand that are gonna make those meals delicious, okay? So that's what we're doing here today. Okay, so before I get into the tour or kind of the showing of the food to have on hand, I want to introduce myself. My name is Rebecca. I am a non-diet dietitian, and I also specialize in cooking for one. And there's really not that much information out there on cooking for one, and there's a lot of us who do it. So I'm here to kind of show you the tips and tricks and the methods that help make cooking for one more enjoyable and easy. And this is particularly for people who enjoy cooking, but don't necessarily enjoy cooking just for themselves. Let's kind of reframe that and look at it as something that's a really freeing, exciting opportunity to cook foods that you enjoy, to put some effort into it, whether it's a little effort or a lot of effort, it doesn't matter. It's just about finding ways to enjoy it more and to feed yourself in a way that's enjoyable and something that you'll be able to do long term. Adapting with it is important too. Before I get started, there's a couple things that I wanted to share. So number one, this is not a how to turn your kitchen into your grocery store video. While it is helpful to have a small variety of foods or ingredients or spices or whatever to give you space to kind of make different things, this is not about stocking up and having all of the options imaginable. This is really about finding a way to kind of manage options with space, money, and overwhelm. So I will give options here, maybe a few more than you would want, and that's okay. Pare it down. This is information for you to take what you want, what's helpful, and then leave the rest behind, okay? So we're not trying to like have tons and tons of options. We're just looking at a few staples that are versatile and easy and can be really delicious quickly. Another thing that I want to keep in mind, that I want you to also keep in mind, is that stocking your kitchen, stocking your pantry, stocking your fridge, stocking your freezer can get really expensive. It can add up really quickly, especially if you're starting from scratch. Now, I want all of us to keep in mind that this process can be done in one haul or it can be done over time. And either way is fine. We need to work with what we've got, and that's okay. Let's take the time that we need to buy the things that we need to, and you know, maybe start with the things that are least expensive, easiest to store, that are gonna be things that you're gonna use right away, and then add in other things later so you have a little bit more of a variety. And then the last thing, going back to this is not a Pinterest pantry tour, there's kind of that like, I don't know if it's a struggle. I don't think I would call it a struggle, but there is that kind of pushing between functionality and also like cost is a huge part of it. and having something that looks nice. So we might each kind of fall in a different category or a different combination of those three things, and all of those are fine. Whatever you want to do and need to do is great, but there is no expectation to have a Pinterest-worthy pantry. There's no expectations, there's no need to do that, but I would say that some of the things that are really popular on Pinterest right now, for example, like clear glass canisters, are also extremely functional. Now you don't have to go and buy a whole set of expensive glass or plastic or I don't know, whatever else canisters. You can use other things, and I'll share some ideas of ways to do that, but to do it more economically and easier, and to use what you have instead of having to get anything. So again, we're kind of managing, we're kind of finding that sweet spot between functionality and something that looks nice, but also is affordable for where we're at. And also, with that being said, all of our kitchens and living situations are different. You might live by yourself, you might have roommates, you might live with family. And so the space that you're gonna have is all gonna be different. So it's important to focus on the absolute musts and to kind of create maybe a hierarchy of what kinds of things you're gonna get, and the space that you have between pantry, and the pantry isn't like an actual pantry, it could be a cupboard, that's my pantry behind me, and also the fridge and in the freezer. So again, there's no hard and fast rule here, it's about managing and figuring out how to incorporate things that are gonna be helpful for you to be able to make easy, delicious food without any plans. Again, that's what we're going for here, is easy, delicious food without any plans. What is it gonna take to get there? I'll show you some ideas. All right, so here we are now, finally. I'm gonna give one last tip, or one last guideline, I guess, before kind of starting any sort of a tour. I got a question on the Table for One Facebook group. If you're interested in joining, there's a link below, and you can also ask questions in the comments here. I don't know, wherever, let me know, I'm happy to answer them. But one of the questions that I got was, how do I combine foods to make something delicious? Now, there's a million different ways to do that, so I'm gonna break it down to be extremely simple and maybe overly simplistic, but there's resources to help you kind of take it that step farther. And so this overly simplistic way of approaching food, or kind of like making combinations, is to think of like a couple of different food groups on your plate, or whatever it is that however you're eating, whatever you're eating. So have some sort of a starch, whether it's a grain or like potatoes or something like that. Have that part of it. Have some sort of a vegetable or a fruit if you'd like it, and then also some sort of a protein. This combination is going to give you a wider variety of nutrients and macronutrients, and that's going to help your meal be more enjoyable, especially with seasonings and flavor added to it. It's going to help it feel more satisfying, and it's going to help you go from eating, enjoying it, and then moving on and doing other things instead of being focused on or distracted by or preoccupied with food, because that preoccupation is often a sign of being hungry still. And that's something that we don't usually think about. So keeping that in mind, let's go tour the pantry. Okay, welcome to my pantry. This is kind of all of the food that I have that is for meals. Now I have baking ingredients separate, as well as snacks. I won't go into these for this video because those are not throw together meals. And so I'm really focusing on ingredients and kind of creating combinations of ingredients, which I will get into later, for making something delicious that is not gonna take much effort or any forethought. So I'm gonna kind of show this in quadrants so we can see a little bit closer what I have in the pantry. In this corner, I've got kind of my really quick, full meals. I am a huge proponent of having something that is either frozen and can be heated up quickly, or like a box of a full meal that can be heated up quickly as well. My go-to is mac and cheese or top ramen. I can add some sort of protein and or vegetable to either of those to make them a little bit more filling. And honestly, I typically just have, especially the mac and cheese. That doesn't necessarily align with what I had mentioned about the combination of food. So if you want something more satisfying, do what I just mentioned and add some sort of protein and or vegetable to it. The options are endless. I won't even get into it because there's so many things that could work with that. But I highly recommend having something that doesn't require any effort. Well, it does require a little effort. It doesn't require any time or planning. You just grab it and then you prepare it as the directions say. I also have some canned ingredients. Canned foods are fantastic, especially when it comes to canned tomatoes, which I have hidden. And like, I guess you could kind of call this canned, but some marinara pasta sauce, canned peppers, jalapenos and chilies. I've got coconut milk. There's lots of different things that you can make with those. They're gonna last a long time, and also they're not very expensive, which is fantastic. Protein sources that are plant-based. As you can see, I also have beans. I've got a variety of beans back here. I've got garbanzo beans as well. These are very low cost, great options, but it does require some planning preparation because you have to cook them. So I like to cook mine in the Instant Pot. It is quite quick, but it still takes about an hour or even a little bit longer depending on how much you're making. And so when I don't have that, I'll go, you can see over here, I've got like kidney beans and other beans that are canned that are ready to go. So those are two great options based on how much time you have. And when I am cooking beans, I'll often cook more than what I want or need. And then I'm able to keep some in the fridge and some in the freezer and have them for later. And then that way, that makes for an even faster protein source. Also have a bunch of pastas and also barley here. There's so many different grains and ways to enjoy. I don't know, it's like a good vehicle for lots of good food. Okay, and then next in this section, I've got kind of seasonings is on this shelf. Not intentional, but kind of smart that I wasn't thinking. So I've got vinegar, I've got a couple different vinegars back here. I like a variety of vinegars, they're great for salad dressings and also different seasonings. I also have over here some ranch powder, which is great to have on hand. And then some like oils. I've got coconut oil behind here. And then I also have this with some like smaller amounts of spices that I don't use as often, and I'll keep them in here and have the list on here of what I have so I know what I've got in there, and that's helpful. These aren't the most accessible. Maybe if I had more space, I would do some sort of like a lazy Susan or turning thing in there, but because I have them organized by what they are, I know that if I want some sort of a vinegar that's not in the fridge, it's gonna be in this line here. And then right here, I have all of my spices. I have way too many spices. I have way more than I need. I have a lot of these that were left over from client projects, and I probably should just get rid of most of them or at least move them elsewhere, but I haven't done that yet. And then I have, see, too many to add in here, and this is my makeshift lid. Okay, so right here I have some of my spices. Again, I have a lot more than I need for sure, but I find it really helpful to keep these spices in containers so that I could just grab all of them out and then get what I need. And I also, hopefully I don't knock it over, but I have the names written on the tops of the lids. So then, not on all of them, I need to add more, especially on these black ones, but that way I can easily see what I have and not have to take everything out. Having good options for spices is helpful because you can make a lot of different things and have things taste a lot different. You can use the similar basic ingredients and add different seasonings to it and have a completely different meal. So that's super easy. And another thing too, these I refill. Winco is my favorite grocery store, and there's other grocery stores too that have bulk spice sections. And that's a great way to save money because you can spend like 10, 20 cents, maybe $1 on a full jar's worth of spices without having to buy the new jar. It's fantastic. And you can also, especially if you're cooking for one, get just a small amount if you need something that you're not going to use in other ways. So before I open and kind of show some options that I have in my freezer, I wanted to share a couple like general overall tips. A freezer is a fantastic place to store so many foods. Like I mentioned before, you can make extra batches of beans and you can freeze those. As you'll see when I open up, I've got frozen like meat and other things that I bought fresh and then froze. And that is a great way to save money because you can buy things that are on sale, maybe like the manager special, you know, it's about to go bad. So buy them then and pop them in the freezer right away and they're gonna last for a really long time. Now, freezers can get really full really fast, so I recommend incorporating, whether it's planned or not, incorporating meals including your freezer ingredients so it doesn't just become the leftover station and you've got leftovers for years and years and years and you have to buy a new freezer because you don't have enough room, but you haven't ever used anything in there. So make those freezer foods a part of your everyday or weekly meal plan. Or utilize it when you don't have a plan and then you don't have to worry about it. Okay, welcome to my freezer. I'm just gonna quickly walk through some things that I have in here that I find to be super helpful. I have kind of sections here. This is like medium full for my house. I've got some cheese, some shredded cheese. I bought a big block of cheese and then I shredded it. It's cheddar cheese. It's such a great tactic to get something that's like a little bit bigger or kind of bulk-ish and then use it, and you can add it to something that you're gonna cook, and you can also just let the cheese sit out for a bit and it's fine, like kind of defrosted. I also, this is one of my favorite things, is I've got some chicken here and it's a little freezer burnt or a lot freezer burnt. I need to transfer it to a bag, but this is what I do with the cheese, with meat, with rice, with beans, all of these things. You put it on a baking sheet with a baking mat because it's so easy to take off, and you freeze it this way, preferably for like an hour or even less, and then transfer it to a bag, and that way things aren't gonna be sticking together. I also have ice cream. I love ice cream. I try to keep it in the freezer all the time because when you don't have foods around, it feels like a restriction, and so when you do have it, it's easy to feel like you are out of control around food. So keeping enjoyable kind of treat type foods around all the time is super helpful to have a more healthy, helpful, less stress relationship with food. Also have green beans and like frozen vegetables, as well as frozen potatoes. I really like these kind of seasoned potatoes. Also, I've got some frozen pork chops. Again, I bought them, they were fresh and on sale, so I put them in here. And I also, oh, chicken. I have more chicken. And then salmon. Frozen seafood is a really great lower price option, and it's just as fresh, if not fresher, than what you can find in the fresh section at the grocery store, especially if you do not live on the coast, because fresh stuff is often frozen and then thawed later. And then I've got some frozen fruit and butter. So I've got just a variety of foods in here, and there's lots of things that you can do with these foods. And then I also have grated, or not grated, but just like frozen ginger, some lime juice that I froze in an ice tray, and herbs, needed to use those up, and some ice packs, and yeah, that's the freezer. Now finally, I'm gonna show you what I have in the fridge. Again, like all of these things, it changes and it morphs as time goes by and depending on what I'm making, but my fridge is pretty sparse right now. And so just to kind of give an idea of what kinds of things are really helpful to have on hand all of the time, and then the things that kind of come and go and how to use those and use what you've got. So let's take a look at the fridge. Okay, so kind of the longest lasting usual ingredients that I have in the fridge are these condiments and sauces. As you can see, I've got a combination of condiments and sauces, and I also have let's see. So I have some better than bouillon, vegetable and chicken. And instead of having stock or broth, that's what I use because it lasts longer and doesn't take as much space. And, you know, there's lots of different things depending on what kind of cuisine you want to make and what kind of ingredients you like. There's just so many options of ingredients to have on hand. Again, I'm not going to go over any of these because they're kind of specific and falling all over the place. But it's helpful to have a variety, especially depending on the kinds of foods that you typically make when you're not planning, or just what you make in general. All right, so next I've got my top shelf of the fridge. I have eggs, which I always have on hand, kind of leftover vegetables. I've got some zucchini, and then I have I keep my leftovers up on the top, usually unless I don't have enough space, and that's some lemon chicken that I made for a client, some tofu, and then down a little farther, I've got milk, which I always have on hand. Breakfast is cereal, and I need milk for my cereal. Some leftover, I've got some silken tofu and shredded zucchini, some miso, and then some other kind of random stuff in the back, and Greek yogurt. Also have some cheeses in here, and then quick show and tell. So this is my swag bag. This isn't like my swag bag stuff you get for free. This is I've got some parsley in here that I've had in here for 3 weeks, maybe a month. And it's just a cotton bag that you get wet, and then you keep your produce in it, and it lasts for a really long time. And what's cool about these, especially if you share a fridge with roommates or with family members and you like to keep your things together, you can put different ingredients in here. Like I could put my zucchini in here, and I could even like wrap it up like this, and you can have all of your things together and then just pull it out when you need to cook and then see what you have and then use what's gonna work. So, I mean, it's just a little bit different way of thinking about cooking, but it's helpful. Okay, so now I wanted to answer another question that somebody submitted in the Table for One Facebook group. One of the group members asked, how do I store all of my food? Do you have any tips or tricks for that? Yeah, and I also want to add a caveat, like do what works for you, whatever's easiest and most convenient, but to do what's most convenient and works for you in general, as opposed to like what's the easiest when you get home from the grocery store, because that might not be something that's helpful to prepare you or to make the looking in what you have to then make decisions about what to eat and to decide what to make. So as you could see in my pantry, I've got cans, but I have a lot of items in glass jars. Now, as I mentioned before, having something clear is super, super helpful to know what you have in there. If you find that you're somebody who quickly and easily forgets what you have on hand and then buys multiples of that, this is a really great option to save you the money and the hassle of rebuying things that you have. Because if you have a limited amount of food and you open that up regularly and you're looking at it, you're gonna kind of remember a little bit of what you have. You might not remember exactly, but you'll probably have a little bit of an idea. And also, it's just helpful to see that so then you can make decisions on what to make, as opposed to like having to pull out items or see whatever you have if they're in bags. Now, bags are fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Boxes are great too. I keep a lot of food in kind of the original boxes, but depending on the space that you have and what is gonna make the whole cooking process easier for you is gonna be what's most important. Another thing that I wanted to add about that is, as I mentioned before, costs can be prohibitive if you're planning on buying all new jars or containers or whatever. And that doesn't have to happen. I feel like I inherited most of my glass jars. I have no idea where they came from. I feel like I maybe stole most of them, which I don't know how I feel about that, but it's fine. Nobody's gotten mad at me. But one thing that you can do without resorting to taking them from others is to reuse glass or other containers. So again, I have this used to be peanut butter jar, washed it in the dishwasher, and I don't know if you can have to hand wash the lids, but I usually do. But I wash that, and then this is safe for whatever I want to use in it. So you don't have to buy particular containers. If you want something that's easy to see and in something clear, you can also use, like, you can get those, they're kind of thicker plastic containers that you can get leftovers in, or kind of what you would see in kitchens. That's an option too. Those can be washed easily. There's so many options to use to kind of organize what you have. But again, I would keep, when you're deciding on what to do, keep in the back of your mind, what's gonna make it the easiest for me to use what I have and to have the quickest, most easy decisions when it comes to throwing something together or deciding what to eat. And for me, and I think for other people as well, or definitely for other people as well, having something that's clear and easy to see is really helpful, because okay, I've got what I have and I can think about what to make. Just a quart, it's okay. Okay, one more reminder that is going to be really important if you're using like canisters, you're adding ingredients to it. Maybe it's not so relevant for this, but like for something bigger. If you already have a little bit of something, we're going lentils here. You've got some lentils, but you bought more. Take your old lentils out, put the fresh in at the bottom, and then you can have the old lentils that you're using first. So using this first in, first out way of food preservation, what's the method? I don't know, whatever it is. You want to use that so you're continually adding stuff to it, or like lentils, for example, and you're not left with the bottom layer of lentils that are like 4 years old or months or whatever old. You want to use the first in, first out for freshness. It's more enjoyable that way and also a little safer. All right, well, thank you for watching. If you are still here, we're trucking on. I've got more information. Let's pull this all together and talk about what to make with all of these foods that you have. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, if you are trying to decide what to make with what you've got, let's keep those food categories in mind. So let's do some sort of a starch. It can be a lot of different things. Let's do some sort of protein and some sort of vegetable. You don't have to do all three of those, but that's a pretty varied, interesting, lots of textures in that, and that can be more satisfying for your food. So off the cuff, but I practiced this earlier, so it's off the cuff from there. But I'm gonna come up with a couple of meal options for you based off of what I have, but focusing on the foods that I have that I wanna use up. Okay, parsley. I have parsley that I wanna use up. I've got some feta cheese. I've got some zucchini in 2 forms, and those are the fresh ingredients that I wanna use up. I recommend starting this process of deciding what to make with your fresh ingredients, because those are gonna go bad first, so you might as well plan whatever you're making around those. So, parsley, zucchini, feta. I came up with this just a little bit ago, but it's still fresh. So that could be some sort of good pasta, right? You could add, I've got frozen pork chops and also frozen chicken in the freezer. Either of those would be good. Okay, so I'm thinking some sort of a pasta dish with these ingredients that I want to use up. Lots of parsley, so I can add it to like some sort of a sauce, chop it up, or even like blend it up with some nuts, kind of like a pesto, but not pesto. Okay, that was very much off the cuff, but that is an option as well. I could go one of 2 directions here. I could go one of 2 directions here. I could do barley or some sort of like a whole grain like this, or I can do some sort of a pasta. There's no right or wrong here. It's just about using what you have, and also recognizing that those fresh ingredients that you need to and want to use up, there's multiple ways to use those up and have different flavors in them. Even though feta is not the most like Italian style cheese, I still might kind of go Italian style seasoning. So I could just do some red wine vinegar and olive oil and even some Italian seasoning, or I could do some oregano and I don't know, whatever else, and have it feel a little bit more Greek. there's different options there, and there's no right or wrong way. It's kind of whatever sounds good, uses what you have, and is easy. I also have, pointing at them, some lemons, so I could add a lot of lemon juice, and that would be really delicious. So like super simple, 2 different options here, and you could do 2 different kinds of protein too. You could do chicken, you can do pork. I have that TVP. I don't think I would do that with it. I think I'd want something like bigger chunks of some sort of a meat. I could also do tofu. I've got a couple types of tofu in my fridge. That's like not a normal thing, but just based off what I've been making this week. I have that, so that could work too. Some like firm tofu that I crisp up on the skillet, that would work too. So a couple options there. But not only do I have those options, I have a whole list of recipes to make with pantry ingredients. And again, pantry ingredients is kind of a wide variety of foods, so adapt it to work with what you have. But I'm gonna be linking, actually I don't have a YouTube video for that. Maybe I don't know what that's gonna look like. Anyways, but I have a link to pantry meal ideas in the description below, and I also have a link for some like written down recommendations for pantry foods. But again, pantry means pantry, fridge, freezer, whatever you keep in your kitchen to be able to throw together quick and easy meals. So not only do I have those like written down recipes and pantry lists, but I also have the Not Following the Recipe video series here on YouTube. It's new, there's not a ton of content there yet, but it's gonna be growing. I've got new ones coming up every week, and that is gonna be a great resource for you as well, which I can link. And go ahead and take a look at those, because it'll give some ideas of how to turn a recipe that's already like out there into something that's gonna use different ingredients and make it work with what you have. Making substitutions is so helpful when it comes to cooking for one. It's really helpful to help reduce food waste and not like buy all sorts of ingredients that you might use, you might not use. And it also helps you save money and get a little creative, which is a little bit fun once you have the tools and the resources to be able to kind of get that started. So those are good resources as well. But not only is it helpful to have like resources for what to make, also need to adapt again to focus on making sure that whatever it is that I'm talking about here, or all of the information out in the world, is gonna work for you yourself. It doesn't matter what's out there if it's not gonna work for you. So the next step that's really important as you're kind of synthesizing or like kind of taking in all of this information is to think, okay, that is something that's really helpful for me, that's not. All those glass jars, please no, don't make me do that. Don't do it if you don't want to, that's totally fine. But hopefully there will be things in this video and also out in the internet and the world that are gonna be helpful or could be helpful or you're interested in, and take that and then leave the rest. We don't need to get overwhelmed. We don't need to feel like we have a million things to have to do. Let's just focus on 1 or 2 things that are gonna be great places to get started, experiment, kind of figure it out and adjust from there. Okay, so that is it. Thank you so much for watching. I do have a couple questions for you. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. First of all, how awesome are these liners? They might be older than I am, probably older than I am. I don't know, we'll see. Actually, we won't see. I don't know where they came from, whatever. So I'm more curious what you think about those, the liners in my cupboards. I also am curious what pantry items you absolutely love and what you like to make with them. Do you like to have eggs on hand so you can make eggs in like a million different ways? Do you like to have all sorts of pastas and sauces and I don't know, whatever. There's so many options. I'm curious what you like to have on hand because we all can learn from each other and I don't know everything. So I want to hear from you as well. Go ahead and share those in the comments. I'm curious and excited to see what kinds of things you have. And like this video and subscribe to this channel if this was helpful for you at all, and or if you're interested in finding ways to make cooking for one more enjoyable and easy and something to like look forward to as opposed to something to dread and feel like it's not worth it, because it doesn't have to not be worth it. It's just gonna take a little bit of a switch to find ways to make it worth it for you. Again, I'm Rebecca, cooking for one, non-dietitian person. Thanks for tuning in, and hit the subscribe so you can continue to get more of these videos, and I really hope that they're helpful. Thanks.